Thank you, everyone, for being with us tonight. It's going to get strange from here on out. You know, on the surface, David Huggins has a pretty normal life. He has a job and a family, pays his bills, goes to work, is a talented artist. But there's something about David that is different from most of the rest of us, and that is his lifetime of experiences with some otherworldly, alien-type beings. He not only has had encounters with them since he was 8 years old, but may have fathered children of some sort with them. In particular, some of these encounters get pretty graphic, and when we come back, we'll be introducing David and talking with he and Farah about their new book, Love in an Alien Purgatory. Stay with us on Coast to Coast AM. All right, the book is called Love in an Alien Purgatory. It's written by Farah Yerduzu, and it's all about the interesting, strange life of David Huggins. David, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
Have you and I met? Because I'm looking at this photo of you on the back cover of the book, and you sure look familiar to me.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Have you ever been in New York?
Many times, yeah. But I just, it just looks like somebody that I've met before. Maybe it was in an underground cavern or something like that. We'll get to that in a minute. Farah told us you don't really care whether people believe you or not. Is that true? I mean, really? You don't care?
No, I really don't.
And is that because it's so hard? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, who am I that you should believe anything I say? I really don't care at all.
Is that sort of born of frustration in that this is such a strange story, you figure why even try to convince people that it's true?
I have never tried to convince anyone of saying it's true. This is just something that I know, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, I mean,
I know this.
What?
I know this. I would never have an opinion if I believed it. I remember once when some news reporter, she said to me, "You believe this really happened to you, don't you?" And I said, no, I don't. If I believed it, I would never have come into this gallery and spoken to the owner, and someone else's work would be on these walls, not mine. When you know something, you know it, and you don't have to explain it to anyone.
Well, you know, you're talking to an audience of about 2 million people right now, and I'm sure they're going to, as they hear the details unfold, they're going to want to know whether you believe it to be true or not. And from that answer, I can't tell if you do or not.
I don't believe it happened. I know it happened.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, let's start it when you're 8 years old. What was happening then? What's your first encounters with these beings?
Well, I was 8 years old, and we were living on a farm, and I was out by our barn, and I was playing around a tree, and suddenly I hear someone say, "David, look behind you." And I turn around, and there is something which I can only describe as a little hairy guy with large glowing eyes. And I look at it, and suddenly I just freeze. I can't move. And then our eyes unlock, and I scramble back screaming, and I start running toward the barn, and I risk the glance backward, and this little hairy guy had turned, and he was walking back into the woods. And that was my first encounter, as far as I know.
And then you start seeing a whole cast of characters, different kinds of beings, right?
Oh, yes. After I saw the little hairy guy, there was what I could only describe as a very large insect-like being that closely resembled a praying mantis. It was about maybe, I would say 5 or 6 feet tall. And when I first saw it, it really scared me, and it sprayed me with some type of liquid. And I ran away, and I noticed that this liquid was on my clothes, and it began to bubble and evaporate very quickly. Go ahead.
Did you tell your parents about this? Hey, Mom, Dad, some praying mantis just sprayed me with some weird liquid.
There was an incident where this was happening, and I'm telling my mother and father, "Hey, Mom, there's something out at the barn. There's something behind the house. And they were saying, quit lying. And one time, I said it one time too many, and I got a whipping like you would not believe.
So you decided to keep the story to yourself?
Well, it wasn't just that. The next day, I have an encounter with, I can only call her a female alien. I have no idea where she's from. And I'm looking at her, she's looking at me, and I say, my mom and dad don't believe me when I say I see you. I got a whipping. And as soon as I said that, I just knew that she didn't like hearing it. And she just stared into my eyes and she said, then don't tell them. And after that, I never did.
Then you have an encounter with something called 8 Floating Grays, and I'm looking at a painting that you did of it, and it's a pretty cool painting. What was the upshot of that? What did they do? How did they interact with you?
Well, okay, I was in our back field. It was a cornfield, and I was looking for arrowheads. And I happened to look up, and there were 8 little grays floating down from the sky. They hit the ground running straight toward me. I jumped up and began running to the house. As I got closer to the house, I looked back, and I noticed that a couple had stopped, and they stepped back, and they just vanished. I went around to the front of the house, and our house was up on cinder blocks. And I looked underneath, and these little grays just came up to the house. And I could see their legs. And they just turned around and walked away. I went inside the house, looked out the back window, and the field was empty. But that night, I wake up in the sleep, and I look out my window, and these little grays are outside looking up at me. And one of them comes inside the house, takes me outside. About 3 or 4 grab hold of me very quick, and we rise up to some type of, I don't know what you want to call it. You can call it a UFO or whatever. I don't know what it was. And we go inside. And I'm in a very well-lit room. There is this woman, and I'm with little gray. And I look at the woman, I look at the gray, and I ask the little gray, is that your mom? And he gives me a quick wink, and the woman smiles also. And then the gray, he holds me, and the woman has a long, thin rod in her hand. And she inserts it up my nose. And I don't know what she put there, but it hurt. And I remember starting to cry, saying, you hurt me, you hurt me. And she says, the pain will go away. Here, let me take away the pain. And as far as I know, that was it. There was someone else there also. We were looking out a very large window, and we were looking at what I only say was the Earth. And the guy said, it's a very beautiful planet. Take care of it. And that's all I remember in regard to this incident.
We're having a little bit of trouble with some breakup on your phone, so I hope we can continue this. But this female being that you encountered there, that's the one you would come to know as Crescent. Was that a name that you gave her, or she told you?
No, I went to her. They had left me alone for a while, and she told me, you'll see my symbol in the sky. And it was the crescent of, yes, it was the crescent of the new moon. And from then on, I just started calling her Crescent.
What do you suppose, now why do you suppose they chose you?
That's the $64 question, man. I have no idea. Even to this day, I still don't know.
Let me ask you this. What do you suppose, now why do you suppose they chose you?
That's the $64 question, man. I have no idea. Even to this day, I still don't know.
Let me ask you this: are these memories that you are describing to us now, and which you have memorialized in your paintings, are they actual memories, or did you have to recover them? Did you remember this into adulthood?
I remember them on film, on my own. But what hit me was there was a book by Bud Hopkins. I think
Intruders?
It was Intruders.
Right.
And it was at a time where I was just feeling very, very scared. I couldn't sleep at night or anything like that. And I think I heard some program with Whitney Strieber, and he mentioned the book. And I went to a bookstore, and I went inside, and I asked the guy for it, but he didn't have it. And he said, but there was another bookstore down the street. I went down there. They didn't have it. Now, what was interesting is that when I came back, and I was passing the first bookstore that I had gone into, the owner came out and said, David, I've got your book. And I said, I thought you said you didn't have it. He said, well, I didn't. But this woman came in, and she said, I should give it to you. Then she just left. So anyway, I bought the book, and I opened up the chapter, Other Women, Other Men, and there was this woman. And I remember saying to myself, this is a woman I never told anyone about. And upon reading that chapter, memory after memory after memory just came flooding back. It was as if a floodgate had opened.
Let me ask Farah for a second. Farah, did you find David's story credible right off the bat? I mean, the details that you're hearing are pretty similar to a lot of what a lot of abductees say. Though the fact is that when this was happening to him, 1951, there were no abduction stories that were widely known in not in the U.S. anyway.
Okay, as far as we know, again, I have to go back to history. The first alien abductions, contacts with interdimensional beings, and this kind of hybrid babies started in Sumerian civilization. This is much more older than we ever can imagine. And in Sumerian times, Sumerian civilization, gods and goddesses were getting married to human women. Gods getting married to human women. Because they weren't able to have their own children. Just like we have in extraterrestrials today. So in every society, again, in every mythology, even in the historical records, we can find this kind of stories. It's up to us to research them and to learn, try to learn what has been happening. Or again, it's up to us to cover up them. So I prefer to research them. That's why when I met David Huggins, I wasn't surprised at all because I met some other people just like him in my own native country, Turkey. But they don't say extraterrestrials, they say jinns. But they are telling me the same stories, so similar. Only the names and places are changing, but the stories are same.
David, the stories that you're telling us now, and in the story that's told in the book, Love in an Alien Purgatory, is that these beings seem to always be around you as you're growing up. Protective? Are they watching over you, kind of a thing?
Yes, that happened a few times. There was one time I nearly drowned. And I see this being, and as I'm looking at this being, I'm kind of moving my feet. I had gone swimming, and there was a drop off. And suddenly, I'm looking at this being, and just as I'm seeing, my foot grabs a hold of a root, and I was able to pull myself to shore, and I didn't drown. And let me see, there was another time where I was driving a car, and there was this car coming up alongside me, and I heard this voice say, "Slow down, let this guy got past you. And I did. And about maybe 50 to 100 yards ahead of me, the guy lost control of his car and he ran off into the ditch.
Well, I mean, is that an alien experience, you think that stuff is? Or
All I know is that I heard the voice and I reacted and I did what the voice told me to do. Slow down, let this guy pass. And that I did. And then the guy had the accident ahead of me.
Sure, go ahead, Farrah.
Can I add something? So, many people asked me why I gave this title to the book, Love in an Alien Purgatory. Purgatory because I had the same experience from my family. Since my great-grandfather, many other family members had contacts in our family, in my mother's side, in fact, in my father's side as well. But this didn't bring us happiness. The most contactees had most unhappy experiences in their personal lives, especially in their family lives, and they were never happy in their marriages. And in general, yes, they had a contact with something, with some beings. Call them extraterrestrials or intraterrestrials or ultraterrestrials or angels, whatever they are. But they always lived in a purgatory. They were in between. Yes, there was love in some of the relationships, just like in David's case. But it was in a purgatory. Once one person is contacted by them, it is very difficult to go back to a normal life in many ways. So, yes, they never leave you alone. They will always be with the contactee, with the abductee, with the experiencer, all his life, all her life, always. But it is such a strange control. In a kind of, you lose the control over your life. You belong to them. You may have a family, you may have children, grandchildren, whatever. You may have a very bright career, a very good life, but a contactee or abductee always belongs to them. So that's why it's a purgatory. It's not an easy experience. Because in my family, there are people for 3 generations, they are still suffering. In many ways.
David, did you have a feeling you were being prepared for something by these beings?
Well, let me tell you of the incident that happened. Our farm was like 60 acres. And there was one day I was playing in our field, and I see one of the little graves. And he is looking at me, and I'm looking at him. And he starts to walk towards some trees and high bushes, and I start to follow him. As I get closer, I notice that there is something on the ground, egg-shaped or oval-shaped. I have no idea what it is. I really don't know what kind of vehicle it is. But anyway, I'm beside it, and suddenly I find myself inside. And there is that little gray, and he's holding a cylinder. And in this cylinder is I guess, a fetus or a baby, really, and he's just showing it to me. And I really don't understand it. I mean, after all, I'm about, 9 years old. Why would you show something like that to a kid? And anyway, he just shows it to me. He doesn't say anything to me, and then the next thing I know, I'm not in the vehicle anymore. I'm outside, and the vehicle just vanishes. But when I was 17, I was going down to Altoona Lake. I was going to meet some friends there. We were going to go swimming, and it was a hot August day. And so instead of taking the road, I went through the woods. And as I go through the woods, I get to a clearing. And there is this woman, whom I call Crescent. And she's under some trees, and I see her, she sees me, and I just freeze. I look at her like...
Hold on a second, David.
Absolutely not. George, how bad am I breaking up?
Oh, we'll deal with it.
Okay. It was nothing like that. I'm in the woods. I immediately see her. She sees me. As far as I know, not a word passed between us. But as she approached me, I just unbuttoned my pants. I couldn't stop myself. Pulled them down around my knees, and I just laid down on the ground. She gets on top of me. She moves her body a couple of times. I reach my climax, and all the while this is happening, I am staring into those big eyes of hers. And when I finish, I just pass out. And about 5 minutes later, I wake up, and I don't remember a thing, except I am scared. I don't know why my clothes are down around my knees. And I jump up, pull them up, and I keep saying to myself, what happened? Why don't I remember this? Why are my clothes like this? And I just run from that spot. And by the time I got to Altoona Lake, I had totally forgotten the incident.
So you were not able to retrieve these memories until later after some sort of a hypnotic regression session?
I never had a hypnotic regression at all.
Oh. So the memories came back to you, these are all conscious memories then, what you're relating to me?
Right at that time, yes, but I was made to forget everything.
Right. Let's jump ahead. Now, you continue having interaction with different kinds of beings, but in 1965, you're 19 years old, you move to New York City, and then it sort of picks up the pace, right? Start the story there.
Okay, I came to New York to study art. I was at the Art Students League, and I had a part-time job working at a hardware store on the east side called Manhattan Hardware. And one day I was putting stock on the shelves, and I happened to look up, and I noticed that there was this man and woman, and they were looking at me. I stopped doing what I was doing. I went over to them. I said, "May I help you?" And they didn't say a word to me. But I found myself just staring into their eyes. And for some reason, I get scared, and I say, "May I help you?" Then they still didn't say anything, and I stepped back. And when I stepped back, they quickly turned, and they left the hardware store. And as the day progressed, it was started to rain. And this was during the transit strike in 1965. And everybody was just like walking around or trying to get a taxi or whatever. There was no mass transit. And it was raining very hard, and it was time to leave. And I just knew that it was going to be one very wet walk, and I had to go across Central Park. I get to 5th Avenue and 72nd Street, and I just hold out my thumb. Everybody was hitchhiking at that time. And this big black car stopped. I opened the door, and there is this woman driving. And she says, "Where are you going?" And I say, "Ma'am, if you can just take me across Central Park, I can walk the rest of the way." And she says, "Get in." I get into the car, close the door, and we drive across Central Park. We didn't talk very much. The rain was heavy, and there was a lot of traffic, and, well, you just don't talk to the driver in conditions like that. But we get to the other side, and I say, "You can just let me out anywhere along here. I can walk home." And she says, "Where do you live?" And I said, "Well, I live up on 87th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam." And she says, "I'll take you." And so she did. We stop in front of our building, and she just turns and looks at me, and she doesn't say a word. And I say, "Well, ma'am, thank you very much. You really saved me a soaking." She still doesn't say anything to me, but she's just staring at me with these large eyes of hers. And then I just say, "Well, thank you again." And I get out of the car, close it, and I run to the building, and that's it. And I go to my apartment, take a bath and everything. I was pretty well soaked. And that night I had, well, want to say it was a dream. Okay, I really do. And the dream consisted of this. It was a woman's face. Her eyes were closed, but that's all I saw. I just saw her face. And the face came closer to me. And I don't remember anything else after that. But as the days and weeks went by, I had the same dream over and over. And then slowly, the dream changed. I started to think that I was having sex. I was someone on top of me, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And the surroundings was in my bedroom. And there was like, as these dreams progressed, I noticed that there was something standing in the corner. It looked stick-like figure, and there was a glow about it. And then I noticed, other details really, like the wall. There was something wrong with the wall, but I didn't know what it was. And I kept trying to tell myself that these were just very strange dreams. But it got to the point where they became so very, very vivid. And then one morning, I wake up and I hear these words, "We'll be back tonight." Well, I went to school, I had my part-time job, and after that was over with, I would come home. And again, there would be this, woman. And suddenly she is there along with this glowing figure. I don't know what to call it really. But he would go to a corner and he would just stand there. And for the next few weeks or a couple of months, I would keep hearing these words. In the morning, "We'll be back tonight." And I would keep coming home. There was one time, it was in the late fall, and I did not know what was going on. I just was kind of going crazy in a way. And that Friday morning, I hear those words again, "We'll be back tonight." But this time, I did not forget. And that whole day was just like a mental battle between the left side and the right side of my brain. And by the end of that day, I was totally exhausted. I kept saying, "It's real." "No, it isn't. It's a dream." But it isn't. It was back and forth. And that evening when I went home, I passed a florist. And in the window, there were these flowers. There was a flowering plant called a pink cyclamen. And it got to a point where I said, okay, bottom line, I'll buy the flowers. I'll take them home. If this woman shows up, then I'll say, those are for you. They're for her. If she doesn't show up, I will use the flowers in a painting. I bought the flowers, took them home, put them on a bookcase. And later that night, I went to bed. In the morning, I get up. I had to get down to the league because I had quit the hardware store and I had a job working in the gallery at the Art Students League. And I passed the bookcase. And I look at the bookcase and something wasn't right. I felt I had put something there, but I couldn't remember what it was. I just didn't know. And I'm kind of scratching my head, but it's getting a little late, so I take a shower and everything, get ready. I go down to the league, and that's it. 12 o'clock, it was time to go for lunch. And I had some time to spare, and I was on the first floor, and I went to the back studios on the first floor, and I happened to pass Mario C. Cooper's watercolor class. And there were all these flower arrangements in his studio. And suddenly it hit me. She took the flowers. I suddenly remembered everything. And I remembered the incident where I was lying in my bed. The woman is looking at the flowers. The insect being was standing close by, and then I said, "Those aren't for you." She picked up the flowers, and her and the insect being left. And I followed, and my eyes followed them, and they went through an opening in the wall. I was so relieved. I really thought I was going nuts.
You're relieved that they walked through this opening in the wall because and taking the flowers.
That she took the flowers.
Yeah.
It was confirmation for me. And anyway, the rest of the day, I couldn't get over it. As, oh, she's real. This isn't some crazy dream. And, well, on Saturdays, the Art Students League closes early, and I closed up the gallery, and I went home. I cleaned up the apartment. I washed dishes that had been in the sink for a couple of days. I mopped and cleaned the floors. I straightened up the studio I had, and the rest of the apartment. And I waited. I knew she was coming back that night. I knew it as well as I know that I'm talking to you right now. And that evening, I'm lying in the bed, and I'm staring at the wall. And suddenly I see a small spot on the wall, and suddenly everything gets very, very quiet. There are not even are there any street sound. And this opening, it opens up to about 6 feet in diameter. First, the insect being comes through, and he goes and he stands in the corner. And the woman comes through, and she comes right over, and she looks at me, and she's very, very pleased. I just know that she is. And she sits down on the bed beside me, and I'm just looking at her. I hadn't fallen asleep now. I had been awake all through this. But as soon as that opening was there, I felt certain changes within myself. It was as if my brain had kind of, well, it had become numb, like certain centers on my brain became numb or paralyzed or whatever, I don't know. But I had not fallen asleep. Now, what was very interesting, I had the blanket on, and the woman was looking at me, and I removed the blanket. I have an erection. But what even surprised me more than that is that I was able to move. Whereas before, during the other times, I had been paralyzed. And, well, we start, what I can only say, we began rubbing our heads together. It was like, well, I would say it was the first time there was foreplay.
Yeah, let's jump ahead a little bit, David. You start sort of giving Crescent and then later others sort of lessons in how humans interact, romance, caring, that sort of thing that accompanies sexual interaction, right?
Yes. And they were very interested in this. And anyway, this is going on for quite a while. And then something very strange happened. I'm in my makeshift studio, and I'm doing some work, and suddenly that opening that I spoke about earlier opened up at my wall. And there is the woman. And then she said, "David, the baby is dying." She was very stressed out. I could hear it in her voice. And I remember saying, "Baby? What baby?" She said, "Your baby, but it's dying." And I say, "Let me see my baby." And at first she wouldn't do it. And then I just yelled it out, "Let me see my baby." And she took the baby out of some box, and she picked it up and held it straight out in front of her. And the baby is just dangling there. And I say, "No, no, in your arms. Listen, I've got to get there. And then she says, no, it's not allowed. You can't come here. My baby's died, and I can't come there. Watch this. And I go, and I lay down on my bed. I pass out, and the next thing I know, I am there, wherever there is. Now, there were 3 of the insect beings there, plus some other women, a few of the grays, and a little hairy guy.
It's like a cave? This is the underground stuff?
Yeah, it's underground. And one of the insect beings comes over, and he's very upset with me. And he says, what are you doing here? And I said, my baby's dying. I want to see and touch my baby. And he just looks at me, and he says, no. And I don't know what to do. I just remember that I bent one knee, I bent the other knee, and I'm on my knees before him, and I begged him to let me see my baby. And everybody seemed to be a little surprised at what I had done. And then he changed his mind, and he said yes. So, anyway, he goes, and he lets me, I see the woman, she's holding the baby in the arms like I had shoulder. And then I reach over, and just as I touch the baby, I would say it was something like static electricity jumped from my hand to the baby. And I look at the insect being, and I say, whoa, did you see that? Let me do that again. And I reached over, and I touched the baby again. And suddenly, everybody, I felt a great deal of excitement. The other 2 beings that were there, they were gone. And I look at and the insect being looks at me, and he says, come with me. And we go into another room. And this room is filled with babies. They were like a little cubicle stacked on top of itself. And I'm looking around, and I was like, whoa, whose babies are these? He points to me, and he says, they're yours. And I was there for one reason, and one reason only. And that was to touch the baby. Whose babies are these? He points to me, and he says, they're yours. And I was there for one reason, and one reason only. And that was to touch the baby.
You get the feeling that, so you're telling me this story is that this race, wherever they are, living underground, some alien species, needed your help to repopulate or to start a new hybrid species, or what? What's your guess? What's going on here?
All I know is that the human touch was very beneficial for the babies. And that's really all I can say. But they were hybrid babies. They were part human, and they were part of, well, alien, I guess you could say. And anyway, after I had touched the babies, the next morning, when I woke up, I was absolutely drained. I couldn't move. I was so weak. And
I'll tell you what. Why don't you just hold there, David? We will continue the basics of this tale. And as fantastic as they are, and maybe as hard to swallow for a lot of people as they are, the basic ingredients are not all that unfamiliar. If you look back over the recorded history, I mean, people claiming to have sex with, call them demons, or gods, or aliens, or whatever, right?
Yes, similar cases, we know that almost all ancient mythological beings were very much interested in the human. And this happened in Sumerian times, this happened in Babylonia, again, this happened in my own native country, Turkey, in Hittite civilization, which was the biggest civilization in that time, almost 5,000 years ago. And gods and goddesses, beings, biological beings, they came from the sky, they came from the underground, they were in flesh and bone. They were biological beings, and they got married, the human woman, in order to start a hybrid generation, a new generation. And again, much later, medieval times, in the dark ages of the religious pressure, many people were having encounters with demons. They were calling them demons, Satan, evil, devil. And the description, again, fits perfectly well to today's reptilian beings. And for some reason, reptilians have the similar physical aspects, just like the demons.
Well, I'm looking at the artwork in David's, David's artwork here in your book, and this Crescent, this woman, alien being that he had this long-term relationship with, and she looks like, her face looks like a typical gray, except for she's got what would appear to be a wig on it, and I could see somebody in years gone by saying, well, that looks like a demon to me. I mean, calling it that, right?
Well, yes. Most of the times, these encounters were happening between the humans and a little bit scary-looking beings, ugly-looking beings. And today we call them reptilians. But in the past, as people didn't know anything about UFOs, anything about extraterrestrial beings, they were titled as demons, monsters, just like it happened in my own family.
Right, Farah, writing this book and working with David and hearing this story, I'm wondering, do you have to sort of pinch yourself at some point? Because I have a pretty open mind about things, and I'm not saying whether I believe him or not. And I realize that, David, you've told me already it doesn't really matter. You're not trying to convince anyone, but I don't even know how to process this information. I don't even know what category to put it in. You know what I mean, Farah? You know what I mean, Farah?
Supernatural category.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's that.
Yes, because we cannot measure, we cannot categorize similar cases. There are many. In the limits of our physical life, in the limits of our physical world, which is a kind of limited, we can only measure this life with our five senses. But as we know, there are 6 to 7 senses, and human being is only using the 5% of the brain. So what's happening in the rest of the brain? And also we have a spiritual side. We are not only a physical body and blood and physical organs. We are much more than this. And again, we are dealing with supernatural. Supernatural has many different categories, not only UFOs or not only alien extraterrestrial interactions. There are many. So yes, first of all, we need to be very open-minded. And the other thing is we need to be well-informed. We need to get our information from the right sources. Because in the field, as we know, not everything is not everything is true, or not everything is expressed in the right way.
Oh, can I get an amen on that one? That's for sure. David, let me ask you this. You did develop a relationship. There was communication with this woman and with other beings. Were you ever able to ask them, what are you doing this for? What's going on? Can you tell me a little bit more? I know that, in the history of ufology and alleged abductions and alien encounters, that these visitors, ETs, whatever they are, have often done editorials. Take care of your planet and be good to each other and don't blow it up with nuclear weapons, that sort of thing. You never got any of that kind of stuff from them, did you?
No, I never did. The only time that ever happened was when I was looking at the planet with this being, and he says, it's a beautiful planet, you should take care of it, and that was it. As for the children, I kind of think, well, there is a couple of paintings that I did, and it goes like this. I was with these beings at the time when they were going to leave me alone for a while, and I was with one of the graves, and we're in what I can only call a laboratory, and he can only call a packaged alien. It was like in a plastic bag, and he hands it to me. And I'm holding it in my hands. And as I'm holding it in my hands, it becomes animated. The eyes open, the mouths open, and the packaged alien, if you will, started tapping his fingers on the inside of the plastic bag. Actually, I get kind of scared at that, and I quickly hand it back to him. Now, what's interesting is that last year I was in an art show, and the painting, which I called the packaged alien, got damaged. And I'm in my studio, and I'm retouching it. And as I am retouching it, I think to myself, I wonder if they're still using these bodies. Well, anyway, I finished fixing the damaged parts of the painting, and later that night I went to bed, and I am with them. There are about maybe 4 or 5, I would say, young people, say maybe in their 20s. And one of them comes over to me and he looks at me and says, "David, we have new bodies now." That's all he said. But I remembered it the next morning, and what I was thinking, well, if you have new bodies now, what happened to the old ones?
Well, back to my original question there, David. Were you able to ever ask them about this, or does this, you were in a state where you're not being the inquisitor, it just doesn't occur to you to ask them questions, or were you able to ask them things like, what's the deal with this whole plan here?
Actually, no. It was like that. I was there for certain functions to perform certain things, like touching the babies or whatever. But I think their race has reached a certain point for this atrophy, and they need new genetic material, something of that order. But
and if you had to guess where they live, is it literally underground, or is it somewhere else, some other dimension, some other reality?
It is hard for me. I am leaning toward interdimensional, all right? But I'm not sure. I mean, if you want to say it's interplanetary, fine. Intergalactic, fine. Interdimensional, fine. Or even inner Earth. But I just don't know where they're from.
When did it stop? When did the sort of the sexual encounter part of it stop?
1975.
Were you able to tell your wife about this stuff at some point? I guess you have, and now that you're on the radio talking about it.
It was rough. It was rough. "I don't want to hear this," she would say. "I don't want to hear this. Go away from me." I don't even talk about it with her.
But I mean, did you tell her the full story at some point, or you never were able to get through all the details?
I was never able to get through the details. She won't even look at the book.
So I guess she is not in what you would call supportive of the project.
She's not my reader.
I'm sorry? Go ahead, Farah.
She's not one of my readers.
No.
No.
Have you been able to speak to Mrs. Huggins about this?
Yes,
about the importance
of course. She's a wonderful lady, and we got together many, many times. In fact, she has been very supportive to our work, because I had to visit David in his house and studio in order to take pictures, in order to take photographs of the paintings, in order to interview David for more details. And Mrs. Huggins has been always very supportive and understanding to our work. But of course, it is not easy to live with such an experience in life. As I say, once it starts, it never ends. something forever.
Well, tell me this. Is there anything like other witnesses who would say, yes, David was in his apartment and we heard weird voices, or I saw strange people coming in and out, or any other kind of testimony that is supportive of his statement? Did his wife see any kind of evidence of visits or encounters?
Is this question to me or to David?
Let's start with you.
Okay. So, that's the thing. David's most experiences, most face-to-face encounters happened until 1990s, right, David? Intense meetings, your intense meetings until 1990s.
Yes.
Okay, so when he was a young boy, when he was a university student, and when he was a young man. Because when he was younger, they needed him. They needed more sperm from him in order to create that new hybrid generation. Of course, I wasn't with David then. I met him only 8 years ago. So, after he came to a certain age, they didn't need him anymore for sexual encounters. The contact is still going on, but they cannot use his physical body anymore.
The contact is still going on, David? And in what way? What do they come and give you updates or what?
Well, they don't give me updates. But there was something that happened about, 4 weeks ago. This has happened a few times. 4 weeks ago or so, excuse me, I am with the hairy guy and I am with Crescent. And the little hairy guy comes over to me and he says, David, you can stay here if you want to stay. But I declined the offer. And they were looking, yes?
Go ahead.
And I have a son. And that's that. I mean, I care for him so much. And if I go to wherever this place is, well, it's going to be difficult for him. I mean, basically, I will drop this body. I will leave this body. And I don't know how to put it any other way, but I told them no.
Well, you have a son here, but if your story is true in a realistic sense, you have children somewhere else as well. Have you had some contact with any of them?
Yes. As when this was going on, I saw the children at different stages, as newborns, as toddlers, as like maybe 5 to 6 year olds, on up to being adults. But I mean, I'm here. I live here. I mean, one of these days I'm going to have son. Okay, we're going to see what happens after that. But at this point in time, I'm just living my life.
David, tell me this. If these hybrids, as you saw them at different stages of their lives, could they walk among us and we wouldn't know the difference?
Well, that incident where one of the young men said that they have new bodies, they look quite human. I would say they could walk down the street and you would not know the difference. There might be some small physiological changes, but nothing outside of that. They look quite human to me.
If this is future science, if one day in the next 200 years, if all these things, using a new body, being in 2 dimensions, are going to be the regular science as a part of the daily life, maybe it is possible to think that this is an education. We are being educated by them. Maybe they are showing us pieces from the future science. In medical fields, and in other scientific fields that we are not aware of in this moment as the Earth Society.
Well, maybe, but I mean, they're not being very forthcoming for what they're telling David about what they're up to and what their ultimate plan is, I'd say.
Yes, this is something that I wrote in the book. David's case is a little bit different than the other contactee abductee cases because his friends, his extraterrestrial visitors, were never worried about David's spiritual enlightenment. So they didn't give New Age style suggestions. They didn't tell him to be a vegetarian. They didn't tell him to practice yoga or meditation. They didn't talk about the spiritual aspects. They were only interested in using his young body. And there is another painting in the book, and it is part of the story. They also created David's clone copy, or the copy of his body, but as a young David. And maybe we can hear this story from David.
Well, you can start it. We're going to take a break in about a minute, David. If you want to start that part of the story or finish it in a minute, we can hear it.
I don't think I can finish it in a minute.
Okay.
You wait until after the break and talk about it. That's all right with me.
We can do that. Sure, that's fine. Farah, any plans to do another book on this? Is there any other place to take it?
Well, of course, we didn't use all of the paintings David did in so many years. We would like to make the second part of the book, and we would like to do that with the Anomalist books again, because it was such a wonderful surprise for us. And if we decide Anomalist books, David and I'm ready to write the second half, and as you can see, David's contact is still going on, of course, in a different level.
Patrick Weegee is the guy from Anomalous Books, and I work with him on we work with him on a book that I co-authored. He certainly is a pro at this stuff. We're taking a break. We're going to the phones when we come back with your questions for Farah Yurduzu and David Huggins. Stay with us on Coast to Coast. Some very strange territory here tonight. Love in an Alien Purgatory is the name of the new book by Farah Yurduzu, The Life and Fantastic Art of David Huggins. And although we've heard the story, I haven't said much about the artwork itself, and it's some stunning stuff. It's graphic. It's right to the core, telling the story and with particular scenes each step of the way. So if you are interested in the book, I mean, it's illustrated, and it's a very effective way to tell this story. And you get a feeling for who these creatures are that David says he's had encounters with since he was 8 years old. We're going to the phones, get to as many of your calls as we can right after this on Coast to Coast. Tana, do you have a question for David or Farah?
Well, just more than an observation, George. Seems to me that these beings have the ability or the know-how to, travel through interdimensional time or whatever, wherever they come from, that they're more advanced than we are. If they can suddenly appear in somebody's house or domicile to collect sperm from, the human way, as far as having sexual intercourse, why wouldn't they just do things the easy way and go to a sperm bank at night when nobody's there and do it the easy way and collect as much sperm as they want? It seems to me they're doing things the hard way. I don't see the point.
I see that. I think that's a fair observation. David, do you have a sense that there is some reason that they need the physical contact, or do you have any idea?
I think they're very interested in human emotions. I think they're interested in the idea of sex per se and the emotions and the feelings that go with that. Also, I don't think there were any sperm banks during the 70s or whatever. I think that is relatively a new idea. But I don't see why they can't sneak into a sperm bank and collect what they want.
It could be that they need something emotional there. Farah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I have two things to say about this. First of all, what they have been doing these close encounters, it's a ritual. It looks like a ritual because they follow and they repeat the same pattern again and again, and this has been going on for thousands of years. We only know the modern time alien abductions and contacts after 1960s, let's say 70s, but it has been going on since the Sumerian civilization. So this is a ritual. This is the first thing. The other thing is that these beings are coming here in our society because we have something that they don't have. In some ways, they need us. That's why they cannot leave us alone. And they still need to use or receive whatever they need from us, which they don't have it. They don't produce it. In their nature, they don't have it. It may be human-like feelings, emotions. It may be human soul. Maybe something else. But this is my idea.
And maybe maybe more important than the reproductive act or sperm is the connection that David described, where he picks up the baby and the baby sort of comes alive. That's
yes,
something that we don't understand.
Connection with a baby, with a father, with a mother, and also between a couple. Not only bloodline, but also they need to put this connection between a couple, just like it happened between David and Crescent, because the relationship between David and Crescent has been very, very strong.
Yeah.
When David was 8 years old, Crescent was looking like Satan. And now David Huggins is a 65 years old gentleman, and Crescent is still same. She never changed. But she was a teacher. She was an instructor at the beginning when he was an 8 years old boy. But she was always with him all his life. And today the contact is going on one way or another. So, first thing, why she never changed? Because she's not living in our time and on our planet. But the second thing is that, yes, they need to keep this contact going on. In a way, Crescent needs David.
Thank you, Perry, for the call. That was an interesting point. East of the Rockies, Robert in Pennsylvania. Hi, Robert. Good morning.
Yes, hi. How are you?
Okay.
I want to talk fast so I don't take much of your time, but
Okay.
I got the show like kind of a little late, so I'm not sure what you're discussing, but I've had like 2 or 3 encounters with things at night. The last one was like a month ago, and it could be that maybe I'm crazy, I don't know. But I think it was more like a succubus. It was kind of more like, it didn't look like a gray with a wig or anything. It looked like a woman. It was like the hardest woman I could have ever been with.
And are you sleeping when this happens? Are you awake or daytime, nighttime, what?
I'm like in between. I know it sounds like a little weird, but it was so real, like I wanted to go back there, and I couldn't.
And it happened just once, or you said 2 or 3 times?
2 or 3 times, yes.
Same dream?
Yes, it's always like in a room, kind of like a white room or something, and I don't know. This is my opinion, but whatever, that there's like some other dimension where something works there, or like it, and I don't know, and one of the things, like in my last dream, like, hello?
Yes.
Yes, in my last dream, like, this woman became, like, she was like hermaphrodite, like she had like both.
Like what? I cannot hear it.
Hermaphrodite. She had characteristics of...
woman and man at the same time.
And sort of like sex didn't even matter for her.
Well, I don't know what to make of that. Farah, do you have any thoughts on this call?
Of course, there's a very short introduction about what he experienced. I would like to speak with him with details. If you like, you can email me if you would like to discuss this topic. privately. I'm sure there are other things that you cannot mention here on the phone, on the radio show. But the introduction is very typical because, again, it has a similar pattern, similar ritual that millions of people are describing. So you are not the first one, you are not the last one. And thank you for mentioning incubus succubus. I also talked about it in the book. In the past, this experience was described as the incubus succubus, strange beings or spiritual beings who come in the night to your bed and they want to make love with you, this kind of things. So the best thing is, whenever you have these encounters, please take notes. The date, the time, what happened, with details, because it is very easy to forget the details, and they want you to forget.
So, Robert, thanks for that call. Robert, maybe you could email Farah. We have the contact information on the Coast to Coast website. Appreciate that call. Hey, I have a question for you, David. In the lore of alien abduction research, this phenomenon seems to follow bloodlines, generation to generation, and I'd like to know if you're concerned about your own son.
In a way, yes, I am. But my son has never said anything to me. If he has had experiences, then perhaps he has forgotten, but he has never mentioned anything like this to me.
How old is he?
And he is 25 now.
Okay. Okay, back to the phones. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And also, I don't believe my brother or my two sisters have had these experiences. I seem to be the only one in my family so far.
Which raises the question, why you? And I know you already said you don't know, you know?
I don't.
Tell me a little bit about your art. Is it sort of a therapy that you have these paintings that are created based on the experiences that happen to you? Or is it more like a compulsion, like automatic writing, where you feel like you have to produce these art pieces?
Well, it's both, really. I had never thought of doing paintings, okay? But there was a meeting held, and one of the beings, I don't know what to call him, but he was basically like one of the main beings. He has some important position. But I do remember a meeting where he came up with the suggestion of letting me do the paintings. And the other beings that were there agreed to it. And then he asked me, David, would you do paintings? And I said, yes. But also, at that time, the first 2 years of my life, when I started remembering, I was in very bad shape. I was like digging a hole for myself. I was scared all the time. And then I got to a point, oh man, I've got to face this. I was digging a hole for me, and the only way I could get out of it was by facing it. And the very first painting I tried doing was extremely difficult. But once I did it, one of the best things I remember after I had finished that painting, that I got an incredible good night's sleep. And then one painting came after the other. But it was like a certain form of therapy. And also there's something else I would like to mention in regard to this. All the experiencers or contactees or whatever you wish to call them, every person I have ever met who have interacted with these beings have a very strong artistic and creative bent. And I feel that this is an aspect of this phenomena which should be looked into, and it doesn't seem to be so. No one is looking into this aspect of it.
Meaning that that might have something to do with who is chosen.
It could well be. But, I mean, you take Whitney Strieber. Whitney Strieber is a writer. Bud Hopkins is a sculptor. Farrah is
Painter. Painter.
Painter, writer, whatever. But, I mean, I paint. And there are other people I have met when we had these art shows. They were either musicians, writers, or painters. And it's an aspect of this phenomena which I really think should be looked into.
Are we, Jason, tell me in my ear, are we able to take calls? Okay, apologies for, the board is sort of overloaded here. Apologies to all of you who tried to get through with your questions for David and Farrah. Maybe we can work something out and have them back another time. A couple of other questions that I had. David, can you contact these beings at will? Can you go into a dream state and say, hey, I want to see you, Crescent, and she pops up, or it's always a one-way street in that regard?
Sometimes it's a one-way street, but all I have to do is visualize their image. Just visualize it, and I interact with them.
I wonder how they'd feel. I wonder how they'd feel about you writing the book and telling the story. Is it did it ever come up that they want it out there, or it was never mentioned?
Well, I don't know, the leader or one of the main people there. I mean, he gave the suggestion: let David do paintings. Paintings are meant to be seen. And after I had my first show, I was with these beings, and they were just smiling at me. Like, yes. They didn't say anything to me, but they were just smiling. They seemed quite pleased with the show.
And Farrah, have you thought of any experiments in that regard then, of sitting David down and saying, hey, let's visualize him, let's see if we can call him in, and I want to be here to see it?
Well, I would like to try this. But again, as far as I see, not only in David's case, in other cases, they control everything. They control the contact. They come and contact whenever they want. And also, this contact, this interaction is very special for David. So I only prefer to observe and write down the book. I didn't want to interfere very much. It is his private life. I respect it. It is his private life. So I don't need to see Crescent in order to be a part of this investigation. I'm not looking for that kind of proof. So, because I saw whatever I needed to show in my own life since I was 2 years old. I had my own encounters since I was 2 years old. So that's why I don't need to see somebody else's extraterrestrial anymore.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd be happy to tag along for that one, but if you don't want to do it. David, tell me this. Overall, do you categorize these experiences as positive or negative? I mean, you told me that for a period there you were really scared, that it was a rough time in your life. Now, looking back on it, what do you think?
Actually, it was a positive experience, but it was very difficult at the same time. I am quite at ease concerning this. I mean, it started as in my childhood, and after a while, you just become at ease with it. I mean, there is nothing I can do about it. Either I'm going to face it or I can deny it. And if I deny it, I'm only doing myself harm.
And Farrah, do you see it the same way for the experiences you've been having since you were 3? I'm sorry we didn't get into that, but...
Well, I mean, yes, it has positive aspects and negative aspects. But it is very difficult to live with this. And it is impossible to live without this. Because you are theirs. You cannot fight against. There is nothing that you can do.
Well, plus also the human part of it. I would think people will call you crazy. There's something wrong with you. You got to be crazy.
Oh, not in every society. Again, in my country, in Turkey, this thing, let's say the jinn aspect, is accepted. So it is known. But again, in another society, in another environment, yes, they can call you easily as crazy. If we were living in the Middle Ages, probably they would blame us for witches, and they would burn us alive in the center of a city, right? If we were doing this under Soviet system.
Sure. And David, for you now, you said your wife had a hard time with it, still has a hard time with it. You must get some grief. I imagine your neighbors, once this book is out and gets wider distribution, you're going to have trouble maybe at work or in the community?
Well, for me, if somebody asks me about it, I tell them.
Right.
I don't take it personally.
Okay.
I've had my problems with it, yes, but what anyone says, that's fine. I know how it sounds, but whatever a person thinks is what he thinks, and I am not going to I'm not going to say to him, listen, you've got to believe me.
Right.
I won't do that. I respect people too much.
David Huggins, we appreciate you coming on and bearing your soul and telling this. I know it wasn't easy for you. And Farah Yerduzu, it was great to have you on the program. Can't believe this was just your first time, because there's so many interesting cases and stories that you've covered over the years. We sure hope to have you back. The name of the book is Love in an Alien Purgatory, The Life and Fantastic Art of David Huggins. Check it out. It is not a boring read. Thank you, everyone, for being with us tonight. Thanks to the folks there at Premier Radio for